Hello, I'm Helen Brand, Chief Executive of ACCA, and thank you for joining me for this conversation with Ross Smith, the Technical Director of IPSASB, here in ACCA's Toronto offices. So ACCA has a purpose to be a force for public good and to lead the global accountancy profession by providing opportunity. And one of the very important ways that we do that has been our long and strong support of international standards. And of course, that includes IPSASB and the work they're doing, and most recently around standards for sustainability. And so, Ross, maybe you can give an introduction and a few of your thoughts around that work.
Thank you very much for ACCA's support of international standard setting. The IPSASB greatly appreciates the support we've received. And in particular, I wanted to thank you for the excellent support in the initial seed financing that ACCA provided to IPSASB back in 2023 and 2024 as we got started on our sustainability standard setting development journey. ACCA was the first organization to step up and encourage the IPSASB to take forward this work and to actually provide some resources to help us get started. And it really did help us move that forward. So
that was our pleasure and our duty, I feel. So thank you. It was great to be even a small part of that. Yeah.
Excellent.
But we saw some important news coming out of IPSASB recently. I believe you've got a new chair.
Thomas Mueller-Marcus Berger has been appointed the next chair of the IPSASB. Those of you who know Thomas, or those who don't, Thomas has been around international standard setting, public sector accounting, and public finance reform projects for well over 30 years during his career. He's had a strong dedication to the public interest and to international standard setting. And he brings a wealth of experience that I think will be really beneficial to the board and its work. In particular, I think as we enter a stage of our standard setting maturity and development at IPSASB, implementation is becoming more and more important, and Thomas has a lot of experience in that.
That's great.
Yeah.
And of course, Ian Carruthers stepping down after 10 years, I believe.
Yeah, so Ian's been the chair for coming on 10 years at the end of this year, and his term will come to end at the end of the year. And he's been around the board's work for even longer than that. So, Ian's been very influential on the development of the IPSAS standards. And during his chairmanship has seen significant movement in the filling of the suite of IPSAS standards as a full and complete set of standards. And I think probably if you asked Ian, one of the things he'd probably be most proud of is that he's led the work in the last few years that's moved us from just a financial reporting standard setting board to now taking on the important topic of sustainability standard setting.
Well, our thanks for the service to Ian. I mean, it's been incredible and moved us forward in that very important way. And of course, welcome to Thomas. And ACCA will do all we can to support him in his leadership and of course the entire organisation. We're delighted to see his appointment too. So sustainability, of course, it's top of mind for many organisations and many financial professionals, whichever sector they're in. And we have policymakers, regulators, all looking at that dimension of business practice, organisational practice. We've always known governments are the largest purchasers, they're the largest employers. They're huge institutions that can have an incredible impact on sustainable practice and developing the sustainable economies and societies that we all need to live in the future. So to see IPSASB, bringing that on and taking responsibility in this space is fantastic. Do you want to just describe a little what IPSASB is doing in developing those sustainability reporting standards?
For many years, IPSASB had been watching developments more on the private sector as there was considerable developments in 2021, 2022. And in early 2022, the World Bank issued a report called Sovereign Climate and Nature Reporting that called out the great work and consolidation in the private sector around sustainability initiatives and reporting, but highlighted the growing gap, particularly noting that the capital markets angle, and that of the $100 trillion global bond market, 40% of that is made up of sovereign debt issued by governments. And a concern that nobody was thinking about the standards for those types of entities, and called on IPSASB at that time to go out and ask its stakeholders whether we might be the right body to expand our remit and start developing standards so that public sector entities would have the reporting standards they need to report on that. And long story short, we consulted our stakeholders. We got overwhelming support to take that on and expand our remit. And a strong push in that consultation that we address climate first. And that's the first project that we've taken on. Again, as I mentioned earlier, with some of the ACCA support at the beginning, we started our work on researching that topic and worked to develop our first exposure draft that went out in late 2024. And that exposure draft on climate reporting had two reporting perspectives covered in it. The first reporting perspective is for the public sector entity to report on its own operations, meaning its climate-related risks and opportunities related to its operations and its processes. Now, that reporting perspective draws upon the work from IFRS and S2 in particular, but with a little bit of S1 included as well to make the reporting model work. And then we public sectorized it using our conceptual framework to adapt and make sure that we had public sector relevant guidance in there, and a few other changes to make sure the guidance would work in the public sector. There's a second reporting perspective that we also proposed in that exposure draft on reporting on climate-related public policy programs. Now, this is more public sector specific, and this relates to those specific parts of the government that have the ability and sovereign powers to create policies, regulations, laws that can change the behaviors across different sectors, across the government, to change behaviors. And where a public sector entity has an objective, usually drawing on one of the climate commitment agreements, like the Paris Agreement, that they've put in place, and then reporting against those programs and the objectives of those programs to try and capture the progress towards achieving those objectives, to promote better transparency, accountability, and at the end of the day, have the ability to measure that progress over time. Now, we got strong feedback to that consultation that the board's been working on since early this year. One of the key pieces of feedback was it was confusing to have those two reporting perspectives in a single standard.
Okay.
So at the time, the board went through all of the feedback, but one of the first decisions it took was to split that exposure draft into two standards. So we're now working to complete that first standard on the first reporting perspective on own operations, and well set up to approve that in December at our coming meeting. So our first standard we're hoping to have completed by the end of this year.
That would be very exciting.
Yes, we're looking forward to it. And then the board will pick up in early 2026 the public policy programs angle and take forward that second reporting perspective for our second standard. So we've got great feedback on it. We've just got to get this first one out the door so we can move to and start to address what we heard on the second one.
Fantastic. ACCA produced a report on sustainability assurance in the public sector, enhancing responsibility and compliance. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but as a way of us educating and informing our stakeholders as well, including our members. Clearly, there are lots of important reasons why we need to engage in sustainability reporting in the public sector. Trust, confidence, compliance, efficiency, and essentially the sustainability of the services that are provided through the public sector. So I wondered if you have some reflections on the drivers of this work and why it is so important as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I mean the board's work on this. One of the reasons I guess it was so natural for us to move into sustainability reporting is because some of the drivers align well with the board's mandate and what we're trying to produce with the reporting principles that we create in terms of trust, accountability, good information for decision making, but also financial accountability. And I really think that's like I mentioned the World Bank report that kind of got us moving into this in the first place. I think one of the most compelling arguments is the economic argument that, with governments under more financial stress than ever before and more calls on government resources than ever, climate starting to eat in a meaningful way into government finances, that you really need to be managing those government finances well and making smart spending decisions.
I think it's exactly the same in the private sector. There are many, many ethical and good reasons for doing this, but actually the commercial drivers for doing it outweigh all others. If you want to be sustainable commercially as well in every other sense of the word, this is the direction of travel, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly a great way to put it. It's whether it's government or private sector, it's good business to manage your finances well. And I think, that's an argument. Another one I think that's a really good reason to do this is, when I step back, I'm a standard setter, but I'm an accountant first. And I think about, I take a lot of pride in being an accountant and being part of the profession. And when I think about the attractiveness of the profession, although I think, it is an exciting career to be an accountant, I think the younger generation, is looking for more in life. And I think, I think about my daughters who are in high school now, when they think about the future of the accounting profession, being able to leverage some of those things that accountants are traditionally good at, like reporting, measurement, assurance, and bringing that to topics that are more topical of the day, like climate reporting and some of the other ESG topics, do increase the attractiveness of the profession and help, I think, future-proof the profession for the skills we need as accountants in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, people want careers with purpose, and there's always been purpose at the heart of the profession, particularly the ethical heart at core of being an accountant. However, when you integrate, sustainability considerations into that, then I think for the next generations entering the workforce, it's even clearer what they can achieve through being a professional accountant. It's an absolute attraction. And it's absolutely necessary.
Yes,
so
exactly.
put the two together, I hope we can see a really flourishing profession as we move forward. From ACCA's perspective, we play our role in supporting the standard setters, but we really will have to make sure that our members are equipped with that knowledge and capacity to be able to, and this, I feel very passionate about this, drive strategies in businesses and organisations that are sustainable, and then, of course, produce the reporting and the assurance that's going to give the trust and confidence to stakeholders that is being delivered. So, yeah, we're very much, and our qualification is changing to make sure that everybody is equipped with that, and our existing members, we're upskilling and giving them the advice and support they need, including in the public sector to play their part. So, going to look more at international public sector standards themselves. It's just over 20 years since they started. The core set of public sector standards were being developed. I actually remember that happening. I was around at the time. I don't know if you were. You look too young for that. But implementation is always the real test, isn't it? And sometimes I'm a little bit astonished that people stop at the standard. I know that's not the philosophy anymore. So, do you want to talk a little about the adoption and implementation of international standards?
Yeah, I really do, because I think although I'm passionate about being a standard setter and the time that I put into it in my career, and the team puts into it and the board puts into it, all of that works, all for naught if the standards aren't being used.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think we're in an exciting time when it comes to implementation now, where we're finally starting to see a real uptick of implementation in the public sector. And that's not an easy task to get the public sector to use the standards. It's always a challenging prospect. The 2025 status report for the International Public Sector Financial Accountability Index was published, and this is the first update since the last one in 2021, and it's captured, again, a significant uptick in the use of accrual broadly, so we're tracking accrual there, but also the use of IPSASB in those accrual frameworks. And So as of the recent 2025 status report and the data collected in 2024, 31% of the government's 169 governments surveyed are on accrual. And that's an increase of 29% in the previous update of 165 countries surveyed. So it's slow and steady. That progression's not quite as positive as was projected at the last index update, which happened in the middle of a pandemic.
Okay.
So I think people are a little more optimistic than what they've been able to realize, but it is still continuing to show the trend, and milestones are still being met. And I think that's...
yeah, I think it's very much the ambition of many states, isn't it? Is there anything you think what is the factor that holds them back? Because I think it is an ambition. Does it look too complex, too time consuming? What's your take on why that trajectory isn't quicker?
What we found is it's different in every jurisdiction.
Okay.
And I think maybe that's why it's hard when a jurisdiction gets serious about implementation. There's a balance between political will of decision makers to make the tough decisions, the investment that's needed to get the right systems in place. A public sector accounting reform on its own isn't that useful. It needs to be part of a public financial management system that's been improving. And it takes time. And I'm very confident in the medium term that you're going to see a continuing groundswell, because it is the developing countries at the moment, so the lower income and the middle income countries, that are really moving forward now in a really great way. It's really...
we've seen that in Peru, for example, the University in Lima actually training students in university on public sector standards, preparing them to go in. I mean, that's a very small example, but you can see many. And at ACCA, of course, we are very committed to training, educating, making sure people are prepared to implement the standards. What are the kind of support mechanisms you have put in place, or you feel should be in place to help with this uptick that we all have an ambition for?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things that has been part of our strategy the last few years that we're really starting to see come together is, better coordination amongst the many parties that need to be involved. So the accounting profession, the audit profession, the standard setters, the supporting NGO institutions like your international development banks and regional development banks, and governments themselves, kind of working together in a better way than they have in the past. In terms of tools, so there is a helpful tool that was developed a few years ago by IFAC called Pathways to Accrual. That kind of sets out a broad framework to develop a transition program and the things you need to think about. So in that planning phase, you kind of think about the right things and sequence them in the right way. The IPSASB's just updated IPSAS 33, that's first-time adoption standard. And this is based on practical experience of jurisdictions that have gone through it. And some of the things that were felt not that helpful in the standard have been streamlined, and more practical examples to help those moving through that first-time adoption have been added. There's also some great training materials that have been developed over the years that are now available in a number of different languages that can be, that helpful first step in getting your human resources ready.
ACCA has produced those certificates and diplomas in IPSAS, which I hope are providing that kind of support you're talking about.
Definitely.
And many others, of course.
Yes. One of the things that we're focusing on in sustainability reporting that I think is particularly interesting and innovative for us as a standard setter is we've set up what's called a Sustainability Implementation Forum. And in this forum, we invite in actual government entities that are starting to report on sustainability to work together and share their experiences. So what are their drivers for reporting? What types of sustainability initiatives are they working on? What kind of data do they have? What types of reports are they producing now? Who's producing them? And this implementation forum has, at the moment, 21 different public sector entities that are joining us on a regular basis from literally all over the world, and continues to grow. But I think the key for us on this and what's helpful is it is the implementers talking about the challenges and being pretty frank on where they're struggling, and then feeding that back to us so we can think about it in our standard setting process in real time.
That's amazing, yeah. Now, as you were saying earlier, although each jurisdiction will have different challenges and it'll be a different pace, there's so much we can learn from each other as well, isn't there?
There is.
And there's nothing better than learning from a role model or somebody going through exactly the same thing. However theoretically we might get things correct, how many education materials we might produce, it's that peer-to-peer learning is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And do you think you're able to capture that? Have you managed to capture that and act on it?
Yeah, we have. So it has impacted things we take into the board in real time, around data requirements, around some of the transition relief that we proposed and how helpful that was or not. And even our discussions on materiality, we've had really robust discussions with the implementers and, trying to understand what materiality really means to them and how they're prioritizing the things that they put in their reports versus what they don't.
Great. Well, I mean, it's my strong hope, and I say strong hope, that within the next 3 to 5 years, we will see sustainability reporting firmly embedded in PFM, throughout the world. It has to become a natural part of what it is that we do, and, that we're making the right decisions about resources so that we can provide sustainable public services moving forward. That's going to take quite a bit of, it's going to take very strong standards, which I guess is your role, political will, though, which you've mentioned before, and the skills and for implementation and the infrastructure and support that goes around that. So we're very committed at ACCA to being a partner in all of that, whether it's through our research, our policy and insights work, our advocacy, and our training and education. What's your view for the next 3 to 5 years? I think that we've set out our work plan there. What do you see happening?
Well, I think it's going to be busy on our end as we're only getting close to our first standard. So in 3 to 5 years, I see that we're continuing to build out the suite of standards. But what I really hope for is that implementation that's been a little slower on the financial reporting side moves with a little more pace on the sustainability side. And the indications from the forum that I just mentioned in our discussions with constituents are there's a real appetite, and people are waiting for us to get this first standard out so they can really start to implement it. And I know the board's work will continue in this space. And maybe as a bit of a pitch, we're just about to go out on a work program consultation. It just actually was published today, which is the date we're recording this. And we'll be out for consultation until, I think, May 4th of 2026. And that's on financial reporting and sustainability. So really important that we hear from all of our stakeholders and they really share what the burning issues are that they think we should deal with next. And what's the balance of our work program going forward to make sure that we're developing those timely and relevant standards that are needed.
Great. That's a great call to action from anyone who might be watching this. Well, thank you, Ross, for sharing all your insights, your knowledge. It's been absolutely fascinating. And thank you to you and your team for all the work that you're doing that's so important to the profession globally. We can't thank you enough for that. We're extremely committed to making sure that professional accountants are playing their part absolutely in developing those PFM infrastructures that truly drive sustainable outcomes. And working together, I'm sure that we can achieve so much. And if anybody has been watching this and wants to know more or get more involved, then please reach out to ACCA or IPSASB, because it really is a collective effort that's going to get this over the line. And thank you for all your work. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Helen. It's been a pleasure to be here. And thank you to everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks.